Pro wrestling business titan Linda McMahon is making her race for Senate against Richard Blumenthal, one to watch across the country. Here now with Daniela Altamari, Hartford Courant reporter. You drew a good one here. This is a race you're watching across the country right now. This thing's tightening.
It's nationally watched. Yep, absolutely.
You know, one thing's fascinating. It seems to me that it comes down to two things, message and money. You know, when I see the ads, Blumenthal saying, listen, I'm Dick Blumenthal. You know who I am. Do what you got to do. And McMahon is talking about jobs. And so I'm wondering whether he is off message. He's saying, listen, my record is stellar. You know what I can do. She's saying I can create jobs. Does it come down to that, jobs?
Well, yeah. I mean, clearly that's what the Q poll this week showed. Jobs in the economy are priority one. But, you know, Dick Blumenthal's a guy who we've known for, you know, in Connecticut for decades now. He spent many years building his reputation for good or bad. She is obviously has been spending the past 6 months rewriting that reputation and showing people another side of him. And her message is, you know, Dick Blumenthal, you thought you knew him, well, you don't. You know.
How about this? Dick Blumenthal hasn't been in a real fight in 2 decades, right? Never really been tested. He's had these cakewalks, and all of a sudden he's in with a pro wrestling titan who knows how to fight, and he's not sure how to respond. He's never had his hands bloodied up.
There's definitely that theory as well that his campaign's been slow to you know, to pick up the punch, to really be aggressive and respond to some of these things that she's lobbing at them.
She's eye gouging and hitting below the belt. He's just being safe and then nice. Right?
Well, yeah.
I won't say that. I shouldn't say that. But, you know, she knows how to fight, right? She's scrapping.
True, although state Democrats have done some of the fighting for him, so he can look like Mr. Clean and, you know, they can get their digs in, which is one thing they've done.
Do you think he'll start getting a little testier and start planting his feet and throwing some punches out there?
He keeps saying, I mean, who knows? You know, they don't really discuss strategy, but he does keep saying that, you know, they will correct the record when they need to. So we'll see, I guess. Interesting, last week, his family, it came out that his family, I guess in July, had given some money. They're obviously very wealthy, maybe not McMahon wealthy, but certainly wealthier than most of us here in Connecticut. They gave some money to the state Democrats. So Blumenthal's money is helping to fund some of the attacks on McMahon, albeit a little bit under the surface.
I suspect we'll see that race grow a little nastier as time goes on. Now, how about this, though? Even though McMahon has narrowed in the polls, you know, the approval rating for Blumenthal is 72%. So you have a picture here where people like him as an AG.
Exactly.
But they're ambivalent about him, at least for now, as a Senate. That's got to be interesting, right?
It's a real paradox, absolutely. You hit on something really interesting. And Doug Schwartz, the Q poll director, mentioned that the other day. He said, you know, maybe the people want him to stay as AG and they don't want him to move up. That could be too. I mean, this is a man who obviously is very ambitious and has spent his, you know, lifetime waiting for a U.S. Senate seat to open. And here it is. Here's his chance. And
there's a poll earlier that showed that the more people get to know McMahon, the less they like her. So on the one hand, she's closing, but on the other hand, there are interesting dynamics on the outside that speak to something else that's driving all this, right? The economy.
Exactly. And there is you know, Blumenthal is obviously hurt by some of the anger and disenchantment with national Democrats, and particularly President Obama. And so that's sort of some of the baggage that he's going to have to carry. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
You have the president coming in Thursday, right?
Yep.
A lot of people with trepidation. You bring a guy in whose approval ratings are down. Is it good to have the president in, or do you want to keep a stiff arm when he has you know, ratings that are problematic? How is the Blumenthal camp responding to that?
Well, it's interesting. You know, President Obama, who, you know, sold out the Civic Center back in the right on the eve of the primary. Everybody remembers that day. This time around, no big rallies, no big public events. It's private fundraisers, basically. So there'll be no photo ops. I mean, there'll be some pictures, obviously, but no, you know, big photo ops of the president with Blumenthal or members of the congressional delegation. So it's kind of interesting.
Is there a sigh of relief? Are you sensing a sigh of relief for the party that, okay, it's good to have the president here, it's good cachet, but he's sort of problematic right now, so best to kind of keep a
Perhaps that was the thinking. That could very well be. Yep. He's he still draws the base in. He still brings in a lot of money. So.
So if you're the McMahon campaign right now and you're seeing the numbers tightening and tightening and tightening, what's the game? What are you hearing from them, and what do you think their game plan will be? What do you suspect they're going to try and do from here on in?
Well,
stay the course on this?
I think you pointed out something. They're focusing on the economy. They're highlighting her story, Linda McMahon's story, coming from bankruptcy and all that, trying to contrast that with Blumenthal, who they're painting as a career politician, more of the same. Her tagline is, "It's time for something different," and that's what she's hoping to bring to Washington. Obviously, we saw this week with the elections in places like Delaware, people are craving something different.
The Tea Party coming on strong, right?
Absolutely.
So if you're Dick Blumenthal now, we talked about if you're the strategist for Linda McMahon, if you're Dick Blumenthal, his camp is thinking what? Okay, they've been on this sort of, you know Dick Blumenthal, he's your guy, he's a fighter for you. apparently that's not being too effective. So what do you do now? Do you try to make the case that you can create jobs when that really hasn't been your background? What do you do now?
Perhaps he's going to have to shift his message a little bit. I mean, you're right. His mantra has been, I'm a fighter, I'm a fighter, I'm a fighter. He's sort of been saying that over and over again. Whether people are buying that part of Blumenthal's message remains to be seen. The poll numbers seem to indicate maybe not, but who knows?
Yeah. This seems to beg to, at some point, you're going to see the white hot light on McMahon and the running of the WWE and the steroids and all the gender issues. And at some point, you've got to believe that they're going to begin to show more and more clips on some of the sordid past of the WWE. And even though she's been a successful businesswoman, it is the kind of business you want for someone who's going to be your senator. And, how does she counter that? What have you heard from her camp, how they counter that?
Well, I mean, they're focusing on, job creation and things like that. Obviously, state Democrats are, as you mentioned, highlighting a different side of the WWE, one that doesn't take care of its employees, one where steroid abuse is rampant, certainly a sort of a troubled industry. So we'll see, sort of which picture people are buying.
Now, the race for governor, not your race, but can this race somehow impact the governor's race as far as strategy and people saying, let's make sure we're not falling asleep here? What do you sense could be happening, or what are you hearing may happen as a result of that? Anyone looking over there and saying, hey, let's not do this, or let's try and do that?
Well, it's interesting because, you have such a large number of candidates from Fairfield County, and, in both races, obviously the main candidates, the major party candidates are all from Fairfield County. So I think that's an interesting dynamic that we necessarily haven't seen in the state before.
All right. Daniela Altamari, Harper Current, reporter. You had the hot race. Everyone thought the governor's race was the hot. You have the race to watch here in Connecticut, no question. So we'll have you back on.
Thank
all right?
you.
Okay. All right, folks. We want to thank all our guests, Reese Norris, Chris Morano, and Daniela Altamari. You can send your show comments or requests or even watch us again at ctnow.com and friend us on Facebook. Daniela, become a fan of the Stan Simpson Show. We're on Twitter, too. Look out for those tweets. Lori Perez and The Real Story are next for the good folks here at Fox, Connecticut. I'm Stan Simpson. We'll see you next week.